Hello everyone, welcome to our Mayoral Candidates Forum, and we're proud to have John Liu come here today. And when I introduce John Liu, he's the first Asian to have become in the city council, and then he became the first Asian citywide to take on the city controller jobs, and now he's running for a very defining election. That's the New York City mayoral election today. And we have today the Alliance of South Asian American Labor, ASAAL, that has put out this forum. So this is going to be creating history because this is the first time ASAAL has taken on the plunge to become a very active political voice, and through empowerment with education, advocacy, and activity and participation. And a quick look about the ASAAL, Asian Alliance of South Asian American Labor, was formed in 2008, and Mr. Mahfudin is right here with me. And he's become the political voice. He's also the treasurer for DC 37, one of the largest unions in the country. And this is what he has taken on today. And for the next few months, that's what you're going to be doing. A lot of political forums, a lot of mayoral candidates forums to see who's going to be ahead in this game. Because whoever it is, it's going to be very important for us, because there are a lot of issues. Of course, a lot of issues cut across the board, but there are some issues that are very significant importance to South Asians. And we want to discuss that with our mayoral candidate today. What is he going to do about them? How is he going to address them if he becomes the mayor, when he becomes the mayor? And how does it impact us? How does it impact New York City? How does it impact our community? How does it impact our country? We want to thank our sponsor. And the host for this evening is ATN Bangla. We're right in ATN Bangla studios right now. It's Mr. Fakhrul Alam. He's the vice president of ATN Bangla. And we thank him profusely for hosting this forum.
Thank you very much. First of all, I congratulate John Liu. In this late night, he is with us. I would like to thank Mr. Maf Mesbah. He is very good organizer, and he is contributing his time, effort, and everything to our Bangladeshi communities towards the mainstream politics. John Liu has to say something.
Well, thank you very much, Renee, for kicking it off. And I have to thank Renee, because at all the community events that I go to, Renee Lobo is there. She's with her camera. She's always eager to talk about the issues, and she's an ever-present presence. So thank you very much, Renee. And of course, I feel at home right here in the ATN studios. Fakhrul, thank you very much for hosting all of us. And of course, I want to thank Maf Misbah-Uddin, the president and founder of the Alliance of South Asian American Labor, ASAAL. He had the vision of putting this forum together and to put the issues on the map. This is the first candidate forum that I know of. I believe it is the absolute first forum in the South Asian community, which is fast growing. Here in New York City, fast growing Bangladeshi population, Pakistani and Indian as well. And the community has contributed so much to what New York is. And we're not a new community here. The South Asian community has been here for decades. But even so, there is a learning curve in the democracy. But today is a very good start, and I'm very proud to be here, and I'm proud to be running for mayor, and I'm looking to elevate the voice of our collective community. So thank you all for being here as well.
Formally introduce Mr. Mahfudin.
Sure.
He has the vision. You know, they always say you have to dream before you realize something. He has this vision. He has this dream to make South Asians politically active. ASAAL is 2008, so that we become more politically, a force to reckon with.
Right.
So, Mr. Mahfudin, tell us, you started from the grassroots level up, this advocacy.
Assalamu alaikum. ASAAL is a dream that came into fruition in 2008. South Asian community is growing faster than any other community groups in the city of New York. We thought that we just cannot become the victim. We must become the victor. In order to become victor, we have to bring our issues together, our people together. For that reason, and that reason alone, we have started Alliance of South Asian American Labor in 2008. Since then, we have created 4 chapters, respectively in the Bronx, in Queens, in Brooklyn and in Manhattan. We have over 500 members, and we can affect easily to over 10,000 voters in the city of New York. We thought that as we are growing, we need to create a situation where we can bring the political candidates and elected officials into the understanding of the South Asian people. This year mayoral election is the most important election in our lifetime. We will be electing a mayor, we will be electing a controller, a public advocate, and 4 borough presidents out of 5, and 19 city council members out of 51. As the mayoral candidates is concerned, we have not endorsed anybody. The good thing is that ASAAL has received calls from all these top 5 candidates in different times to talk to us. Thank you very much for listening.
So thank you for ASAAL, and thank you for creating this dream. So let's start with Mr. Fakul Alam, a question on Senior Citizen Center.
Thank you. As the mayor of New York City, what would your administration do to create more needs-based senior centers, increase cultural and language accessibility, and create more child care centers across the city?
Being mayor of New York City, it's about having the responsibility to take care of people. And the reality is that even in our fast-growing immigrant community, the fastest-growing segment of our population are senior citizens. And in many cases, they want to have the services so that they can continue to live independently and somewhat productively. Senior centers have always been an important part of New York City. But not all of the senior centers have been able to attract the seniors from our communities just because of the kinds of activities, the kinds of foods, the kinds of services. So we do need senior centers that cater to certain kinds of communities, not to be exclusive of anybody else, but at least the kinds of focus that you want to have that attract people from this fast-growing community. On the issue of childcare, that is also very important because as we know, especially in recent years, it's very difficult to support a family on one income. A lot of times, both parents have to go to work, and so you need childcare facilities. You need something for young kids to do, and that's something that also should be a priority of the city. I do not believe it's been a priority under this administration. I've put together a people's budget that reviews the needs of New Yorkers top to bottom and proposed $15 billion of new needs that we should be investing in over the next 4 years. There's no reason why city government can't be more accessible to people and not be inaccessible to people just because they're not fluent in English. So these are priorities.
Our second question is from Mrs. Mazida Dean. She's the National Women's Coordinator for ASAAL.
Today, more than 10% of the city school system population is Muslim children. As a mayor, would you support school holiday to observe the 2 religious Eid holiday during the school year? Another question, would John promised 2010. Also, will your administration work with the Department of Education in implementing the providing of halal food for over 107,000 Muslim students?
Muslims have very important holidays, specifically the Eid holidays. I don't believe that with so many students who observe Eid, that they should be forced to choose between observing the most important holidays of their faith and having to go to school. And given that there are other major religions which have religious holidays as well, it's only fair that we have the same kinds of rights to students and families who are Muslim. So that's something that I've supported, the school holidays. I've supported that long ago when I was a member of the city council, and I've continued to support that as city controller, and as mayor, I would make it happen. People in the Muslim community have food restrictions, and halal food is a must. And so if we want kids to have nutrition in our public schools, which we should make that a priority, breakfast and lunch, we should offer halal food.
Thank you, John. Next question is from Ali Najmi. He's the political director for ASAAL.
Where do you stand on what the NYPD has been doing with respect to surveillance of the Muslim American community? And if you're mayor, how would you ensure that the civil liberties of the Muslim American community were respected by the NYPD?
As mayor, one of my top priorities is going to be public safety. Public safety in terms of keeping criminals out of our city or off our streets, and also paying very much attention to, unfortunately, the terror threats that have continued to have our city targeted. But we have to put the police resources where the problems actually are. And the fact is that for a long time, the NYPD has conducted surveillance. I don't use fancy words like surveillance. I say they've been spying on people. Spying on people in the community, on the streets, in mosques, in schools, on college campuses, and spying on people for no reason other than they happen to be Muslim. It is just, in my opinion, un-American and unacceptable for the police or any part of government to be spying on people for no reason other than the fact that they happen to be of a particular religion. In this case, they're Muslim. So I think it is absolutely wrong, and I would not allow it under my administration. Muslim Americans are law-abiding citizens.
Our next question is from Shafiqur Rahman. He's the Executive Director for ASAAL.
New York City Council introduced a bill called Intro 410, where municipal elections non-citizens can vote. What's your position on that? And second part of my question is, what's your point of view currently in federal level comprehensive immigration reform bill?
I support comprehensive immigration reform. And I take the president's word at that. He made it a priority in his annual State of the Union speech that he was going to pass comprehensive immigration reform. It's working its way through Congress. Obviously, you have some elements in Congress who are going to do everything they can to stop it from passing. So I'm still optimistic that Congress can get it done this year. We need it for this country. And we need it for the city of New York because we have always been a city of immigrants. For 400 years, New York City has been a destination for people from all around the world. That has, in fact, made our city the greatest city in the world. On the issue of Intro 410, it's something I support. It's something I support. We have to understand the history of this country, that for the most part of this country's history, there was not a requirement of citizenship to vote. Many people in our community been here for a long time. They want to be citizens. They are American. They're proud to call themselves Americans. But the immigration system makes it almost impossible or gives tremendous delays for these individuals who want to be citizens, who want to be American. To have green card holders who have been living in the city for some time to be able to vote in New York City elections.
Next question is coming right from my colleague here, Mr. Mafiuddin, founder and president of ASAAL.
Yes, once again, as the South Asian population grows in this country, in this city, so do we need the jobs. John, as a mayor, how you will create jobs where these South Asian and all other New York City residents can get the good job, and also the minimum wage, because those who are migrated newly, they cannot get a big job, big paying job, they need the minimum wage. So how we will support to increase the minimum wage in the city of New York?
There are many economic policies that I expect as the next mayor to bring about to New York City. Economic policies that start leveling the playing field, give people more equal opportunity. Remember, this is a city that had always had a promise for us. You come here, you work hard, you dream big, and then you work a little harder. And then you can achieve great success. But I think in recent years, this has become much, much more difficult. It's almost as if people are working harder and harder or trying to work harder and harder, and they're not given the chance, and the rich and powerful keep doing better and better, and everybody else gets left behind. I've talked about fixing our fiscal priorities, where we stop giving major corporations and private developers all these tax breaks, where they're supposed to use those tax breaks and create jobs, and I have found through my audits that in the vast majority of the cases, they wind up creating no jobs, even after they've taken hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars of taxpayers' money in the form of these subsidies. So for example, let's stop giving away these corporate tax breaks to big companies and instead give them to small companies. So I believe that not only do we have to reduce the ticket blitzes on small business owners, But instead of giving tax breaks to these big companies like insurance companies, let's use that money and instead give it exempt 250,000 small businesses across the city from having to pay that business tax. Business owners are able to grow their business and possibly hire an additional person. All of a sudden, you've created jobs.
Sure.
Tens of thousands of jobs in every neighborhood across the city, not just on Wall Street or not just in certain neighborhoods, but in every neighborhood. And that's the kind of economic policy that we should have.
Next question is from Mr. Fakul Lam.
Every year, United Nations members celebrate the 21st February as International Mother Tongue Day. In the memory of language martyr, do you think, as a capital of the world, New York City has an obligation to build a memorial monument in this great city?
We are the capital of the world, and I think we are the capital of memorials and monuments. These memorials have almost always been driven by private efforts. Even the 9/11 memorial has been driven primarily by a private effort. So I cannot promise that as mayor I would lead the charge. In fact, it's almost always a private enterprise or a private organization that pushes hard. So if we have the private organization that is willing to lead the charge, I certainly would give them equal access.
Father Krishna Mohan, the question, and he's the secretary for ASAAL.
We have many South Asians working as taxi operators for a living. How would you ensure that the TLC policy is not dictated by the contributions by the taxi garage owners? And also, how often you think the taxi fare should be increased, given the fact that these drivers depend on those
Sure. The Taxi and Limousine Commission is an agency that I believe needs a lot of work and improvement. They are responsible for looking for the interests of the taxi riding public, as well as the livery car riding public. And they also have to pay attention to the businesses that comprise this significant industry in New York City, whether it be the yellow cab industry or the for-hire car industry. They also have to keep an eye on what the workers, the drivers, are responsible for and are subject to. On the issue of fare increases, it's not just fare increases; it's also the lease rates, the lease rates for the vehicles themselves, because oftentimes the drivers have to pay the lease rates, and even if you raise the fares, if you don't keep a lid on the lease rates, then the drivers don't actually get more money in their pocket. So on the issue of how often, I can't say every 2 years or every 4 years. That depends on how fast costs are rising. For example, if fuel costs are going through the roof, that may necessitate a temporary surcharge that we have had in recent years.
Thank you, John. Our next question is from Mr. Chuck Mohan, who's the Vice President for ASAAL.
The mayoral control of our schools on the Bloomberg administration has failed our school children and did not improve their scholastic achievement. If you're elected mayor, will you continue the mayoral control of schools? If yes, why would you continue? If no, what changes would you implement?
The system of mayoral control that we have right now for the schools is a matter of state law. The current law expires in 2015, so mayoral control as we know it today would expire in 2015 unless the state legislature acts sooner. So it is not within the purview of the mayor of New York City to say that he or she is not going to have mayoral control. But the real answer to your question is I do support mayoral control. I supported mayoral control when I was a member of the City Council and active member of the Education Committee. And I support mayoral control going forward. Why? Because I think the buck has to stop with the mayor. The mayor has to be responsible. The mayor has to be accountable. For when schools are successful, the mayor should take credit. When schools are failing, the mayor should take the blame and not close schools and blame them for failing. No, the mayor should be accepting the responsibility for blame and failure. The problem with Mayor Bloomberg, though, is that he took control of the schools and then had no accountability whatsoever. So it is not about mayoral control itself. It's about who the mayor is and what priority he or she gives education. The Bloomberg administration had to go get a waiver from state law in each and every one of the mayor's selections for chancellor.
We have one more question on education from Adil Ahmed, who is the president of Manhattan chapter for ASAAL.
You kind of addressed it, but going a little further, what's your position on the tension between keeping city schools open or closing them versus opening more charter schools?
Happened to be in these last few years where school was having some tough times. They needed additional help and resources. And it's not the school that failed, it's the Bloomberg administration that failed these schools and all the kids in those schools. So I don't believe in closing schools. On the issue of charter schools, I don't think the way to build charter schools is to throw them into buildings that already have other schools. It has created tensions so insurmountable in some cases that it's a huge distraction away from the education of our kids. It's too destructive. I think that there have been some very successful charter schools that are community-grown charter schools, almost always with a community-based organization as its partner.
Our next question is from Mr. Ehsan ul Haq, who is the president of the Brooklyn chapter for ASAAL.
As a mayor of New York City, under your leadership, what commitment will you make to ensure that health and hospital corporations are adequately funded to address health issues of the uninsured, communities of color, seniors, the disabled, immigrants, and the poor people?
I believe that the city has to maintain its commitment to the Health and Hospitals Corporation and to the hospitals themselves, but it still can do better. For example, I have audited some of the Health and Hospitals Corporation's operations and have found that there is the management is not tight enough. There are contracts that they have taken out with some of the private universities that cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and we have found that the services that the private universities were supposed to provide in these public hospitals were not always well documented, meaning that maybe those services were never rendered in the first place, even though the city paid a lot of money. So we've got to tighten some of the management of the Health and Hospitals Corporation hospitals, and we also have to be mindful of what national health care will do to our public hospitals. The reimbursement rates are surely going to be lowered so that the revenue coming from the federal government into the HHC hospitals are going to be lowered. On the other hand, the President's national health care provides insurance and coverage for more people than otherwise would have been covered currently. And so that's potentially a net positive for our hospital system.
Next question is from Nasreen Ahmed. She's a member of ASAAL.
We are seeing that recently there is a lot of women are victims of domestic violence. So my question is, as our mayor, what will be your plan to protect South Asian women in terms of building shelter for South Asian women or halfway homes? So what's the plan for that?
Domestic violence is still a scourge in too many communities, and it's even far worse in the immigrant community because many times the abusers hold the power of the immigration status over the women who are being abused. This is something that, to the mayor's credit, he has started domestic violence initiatives within the NYPD. I would seek to expand that to have far more language and cultural competencies so they understand the different communities, particularly the immigrant communities where women are continuing to be targeted and abused. We have to break the cycle of violence.
How do you address the affordable housing crisis that we see in New York City? And as mayor of New York City, would you be addressing it by having new construction plans or modernizing old houses for low and moderate income groups?
I've got a plan that works on a number of different levels. First and foremost, we have the New York City Housing Authority, NYCHA, where 600,000 fellow New Yorkers live in NYCHA buildings, and they have been neglected and ignored by the current administration for 12 years. I plan to have NYCHA managed in a way that is in lockstep with City Hall. We're not going to just push it off to NYCHA. We're going to be very involved in exactly what's happening with these 600,000 fellow New Yorkers. We also have a fair number, a significant number of apartments whose affordability status is coming to expiration soon. The so-called Mitchell-Lama buildings, they're losing their status, and so they will revert to full market rents. That's something that we have to keep an eye on and rehabilitate many of those units and continue the affordability status as long as possible.
So we'd like to hear your concluding remarks.
Today, in 2013, I'm sitting here before you. I'm way beyond anything I imagined would ever happen in my lifetime. Beyond imagining that I could ever run for office, beyond ever thinking that I could serve as New York City Comptroller, the Chief Financial Officer. I write $70 billion worth of checks every single year. I manage $140 billion of assets for the city. I never dreamed that I or someone like me could be in this position. And now I'm talking with all of you about running for mayor of New York City. I'm proud to be an Asian American immigrant. I'm proud to have gotten this far. And I know that in 2013, it's not going to be an easy election. I thank you all for being here. It's really late tonight, but you're still here talking about the issues. And this is the kind of democracy participation that we need much more of in our community. And I'm very proud to be part of this historical event, the first South Asian American mayoral forum that has ever been had here in the city of New York.
Mr. Mafuddin has been calculating in his head a lot of stuff, and he's going to make a very important announcement right now.
Thank you very much for everybody coming and those who participated, especially my thanks to all ASAAL leaders who are here tonight. Because of you, because of your hard work, because of your support, because of your dedication, ASAAL has came and brought the South Asian people into a level I strongly believe on. Whoever becomes the next mayor will recognize and will accept South Asian as the part of New York City mosaic they all claim. But because it is a forum that is organized by Alliance of South Asian American Labor and its leadership, and we have John Liu with us as a mayoral candidate, our screening is over, our forum is done, our support will be announced. Tonight, at this moment, at this time, Alliance of South Asian American Labor is endorsing John C. Liu for the next mayor of the city of New York. So, all I request to all my leaders, please come forward. We'll have our banner. The last shot will be taken, keeping John in front. Our struggle has begun. Our fight will continue. We'll reach there on September 10, and then definitely will become the mayor of the city of New York on November 5th. January 1st, John is going to take the oath of office as the mayor of the city of New York. Yeah.